Frogman Friday.
Yeah, boy.
What's up, guys? It's that time again. Welcome to the Frogman Friday show, presented by Transcend, the best peptide and hormone therapy. They put your health first so you can live more and worry less. Go to transcendcompany.com/Birdman to begin your wellness transformation today. Today, our badass guest is John Timar, aka Big T. He served 4 years as a Navy SEAL, exiting service as a petty officer second class. He co-founded Grapple Science in 2023, located both in Atlanta, Georgia, and Trinidad, Texas. You can follow Big T on all social handles to follow the show. To learn more about Grapple Science, go check out grapplescience.com. Side note, he was featured on the cover of People magazine in 2017 Sexiest Man Alive edition. Some say it's Blake Shelton, but go check it out for yourself. Big T, welcome to the show.
That was awesome. That was great, man. Thank you. What's up, Birdman? How are you?
I'm good, man. It's so good to see your face. And just, I'll say this to everybody. People might not know, but most probably will, that you're a mentor to a lot of guys in the community, because most of us, we get out of the special ops and we just can't seem to figure out how to turn it on. And you've been able to excel in a career of special operations and get out and turn business into a profitable venture. You've been able to grow businesses, scale businesses. You're a black belt in BJJ. Like, you are the Captain America, if you will. So
I appreciate the kind words, man, but I fumbled a whole lot along the way.
yeah.
Like, it was never easy. And the transitions were difficult. They were difficult for me. I'm sure they're difficult for everybody. And finding your true north is not always an obvious thing. It takes a lot of trial and error and work, and but I appreciate the kind words. That's cool. I mean, my daughter's going to love that, and then she's going to laugh at me.
Well, you speak about transition. It's funny because it is hard to transition out of the service. And then, so you've done that, but you did it gracefully. Yes, you worked hard, but then you got into this role where you're the CEO of Killcliff, and you've had to transition out of that too. And so I don't want to get too much down the weeds because I want to focus on what you got right now, but talk to me about transition, and then we'll jump right into your company.
Man, well, I mean, transition it's difficult, right? Because you have to learn. It's kind of like you have to be agile and adapt, and you have to learn, and you have to find out what makes you happy, what you're passionate about, what skills you really that resonate the most with you, right? You might be able to do a lot of things, but some things you really like doing, and double down on those. And I don't know if there's a right path or answer for anybody, because I've done. If you look at the things I've done, from private security, as you can imagine, intelligence contracting, as you can imagine, to software startups, to consumer products, it's all very different. What I find is, me personally, I find myself, like, I think, most content and most alive in environments that resemble small units, where there's a high risk, high reward. There's a lot of agility, and there's a requirement to think fast and to solve problems, and you can contribute across the board. That's where I think I find myself in these environments. They're a little less defined, and that's where I thrive. And so that's not everybody, but once I kind of started leaning that direction, then it was easy for me to get involved in startups. And then, having done several in different industries, and then I just happened the back end to consumer products, and then the light went off. I was like, wow, I love this, because it's where my personal creativity meets with all those other attributes that I mentioned, and I can actually do something unique and do it well, and it's really aligned with my lifestyle. So that's but transition was hard for me when I got out of the Navy. It was really difficult. I was telling you earlier before we turned this on, like, when I got out, people either didn't know what a SEAL was or didn't believe I was a SEAL because I didn't look like Charlie Sheen, right? Looked like Blake Shelton instead. Actually, he looks like he was on this earth before him. Important point. And I remember, before he hooked up with Gwen Stefani, I was working in Georgetown in DC back in my Intel days, and I was cruising down the street to get some coffee. She came walking by me with that little baby of hers in a stroller, and she looked at me, and I think that she came looking for me after that, and she ended up with Blake.
I believe you. I think that's the real story.
That's how the story went. But I went through a lot of dark times, man. I went through dark times trying to find my way after Navy. I couldn't get a job that after being a SEAL, I was like, this is the job for me. Like I'm a big shot. Couldn't find that. I couldn't get a job in corporate America. Those are all very difficult transitions for me because you leave the SEAL teams and you have this massive ego and then the world doesn't care. And that's really hard on a lot of people. And the other thing that you miss in that transition environment is the brotherhood. You have this group of dudes where every day it's like you're in the locker room. You're out there, you're training hard, you're sweating, you're shedding blood together, you're living your best life together. And it's like all time 24/7, and then you're out of it, and then that's completely gone. And then, by the way, your neighbors that are working at the bank or the law office or wherever they're working, that's not the way they're living. And so it's really finding your tribe is really, really hard. And that's probably for me, thinking about transitions, whether it's me out of the Navy or what I did leading a company, a super successful company, and then stepping off to do my own thing. Like finding your tribe, I think, is the ground zero to a successful transition because it helps you, it inspires you. It puts maybe some guide rails out there too, so you don't inadvertently step on your own foot and do something stupid. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing that you said at the very end, I was hoping you'd say it is your creativity because you're a super creative guy. And I think that's where most people would flourish, especially in the special operations community, being creative, because that's when your heart and soul get pumped into something, and that's when you really see the fruit of it. So that, I mean, being creative helps you take this company, takes Killcliff up to the level that it was, and then you step into your new company, Grapple Science, and I want to know all about it. So talk to me about what it is, why you started it, what do people need to know about it?
yeah, man, thank you. So Grapple Science at its core is it's a sports nutrition company for combat athletes, right? So myself, I've been doing jujitsu in particular since I think 2006. So gosh, nearly 18 years. I was a high school wrestler, obviously a SEAL. One funny thing about the SEAL teams, when I rolled in there, I ended up on the SEAL Team 8 boxing team. I don't know if you knew, but we had a boxing team. And it was funny because the British Royal Army team was going around the world doing these smokers events, an amateur team. They'd all be pro if they weren't in the military, right? They called the Little Creek base and they're like, hey, base commander, can you host a smokers event? We want to come over do this PR tour. He's like, yeah, I got CBs, I got SEALs, I got Marines, I got EOD, I got it all here. We'll have a team put together. And the rumor has it he was calling all the quarter decks, calling all the skippers, and he's like, "Hey, you got any boxers?" And everyone's like, "No, I don't have anybody." Everyone's just hanging up the phone on him. And he calls SEAL Team 8, and the Master Chief at the time had trained boxers. That was like one of his side deals. And we were literally new meets walking in the quarter deck. He's like, "Yeah, I got the team right here." Had like every weight class covered. It was crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I boxed. I boxed at SEAL Team 8. So I've been fighting most of my life in a recreational capacity for fitness, and for me, it was one of the things when if I want to spend time learning, doing something, I want to learn something. So that kind of I got into the sport. But as a guy who's been aging in the sport and been around it for years, and when I was at Killcliff, I sponsored the largest fight team in the world, Killcliff Fight Club. It's still the largest. We did that deal and got the naming rights to that team. They have like 80 pro fighters, some of the biggest names out there. Robbie Lawler is one of the coaches. What I realized was that the community is big and it's getting bigger. In America itself, there's around, when you take jujitsu and judo and wrestling was the fastest growing sport for boys and girls. And you take mixed martial arts. So all these sports where it's either fighting on the ground or you're going to end up on the ground, somehow dealing with that, the grappling environment. There's more people doing that in America now than CrossFit, and it's growing fast. But there's no bespoke nutrition businesses that are supporting these people. It's very different. When you looked at like CrossFit in the early days, the ecosystem was large and vast. You had doctors in there, you had all sorts of different types of gear and apparel companies, you had equipment manufacturers, you had supplement companies. Killcliff, a beverage, started in CrossFit, and that's where it went viral, right? You had all this support coming from the outside into this community. And what you have in this mixed martial arts and jujitsu community is a larger community now that's growing faster. That has no support. It just has gear and apparel. Last year at Jiu-Jitsu Con, which is the big convention every September, there was 100,000 people registered for the convention. there was 40,000 people on the floor every day. There were 10,000 competitors on the mat every day. Where do you have 10,000 people competing on the mats anywhere? Like a marathon, you have maybe 10, you have more than 10,000 people, maybe a huge video game tournament thing, but where? Like that's a massive group of people. They're all hobbyists competing. And all the booths were literally gear and apparel companies. So part of the idea is I see an opportunity. I'm like, man, this is a huge community. It's underserved. They're not supported with strength and conditioning and nutrition products and programs to help athletes over the course of their career or their hobby. And me as an aging athlete, I know it because every time I always go to the morning class, it's mostly older dudes in it. It's just out of convenience because, you know, I try to be a good family man. So I don't want to train when I'm spending time with my family in the evening. So I train in the morning before I get started. And I go in there and, you know, to a man, you're sitting around shooting the breeze, just like you're in the locker room after you know, any sort of sport or being in the teams. Guys are just trading secrets and tips and tricks, and inevitably they're talking about their personal stack of nutrition, their dark magic that keeps them going. That's how I healed my shoulder. This is how I stay alert. This is my caustic cocktail. Like they're just like crushing it with all these ideas. So clearly people are using, this is a huge group of people. They're buying a lot of supplements, but there's really nothing that's thoughtfully designed, purpose built for the sport. So I decided we would change that. And being a guy I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, I'd like to do it for another 20. I started thinking to myself, well, you know, there's a selfish purpose to this, is I can create products that I want to consume to help me make it for another 20 years on the mat, to harden my chassis and make me strong mentally and physically. And so that was the genesis of Grapple Science. There's three of us. GW, who's the first guy at Killcliff alongside Todd, the founder. I worked with him for over 5 years. He's won the world championships in jiu-jitsu multiple times. And a really cool dude out of Texas, Steve Rocks, who owns Skyfall Reserve and Camp Vertex. And he's one of those guys. It's a little bit younger, not much younger than me, a little bit younger, but he got into jiu-jitsu a little bit later in life with his kids, and he really got the bug. You know, he's like, I love this community. I want to be part of it. He started investing and built a training camp. And he's an amazing content creator. So we teamed up with him, GW and I, and the three of us started Grapple Science. So very passionate about it. And we have a really, really big roadmap in terms of the types of products we're creating. Shall I stop there? Because I've been talking for like 10 minutes.
No, keep it going. This is about you, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. So at its core, we're building products for fatigue management. We started with a nootropic for mental and cognitive endurance and acuity, but as we look to the other products in our initial stack, the backbone of the business, what we're doing is we're taking products that you know, we're taking things from traditional supplementation, weightlifting, and endurance sports, and we're kind of marrying the two up to create really unique formulations and products. And so we have some really cool products that kind of change the way you think about hydration. I don't want to get into it too much because it's not a traditional hydration powder stick, but it's like a pre-training product. It's not a pre-workout product, it's pre-training, very different. And then we have a rapid recovery product, and then we have products that help deal with things like lactic acid buildup. So we think about like how do you keep your, all things being equal, how do you keep your body functioning at a high level, keeping blood flow coming into your muscles and keeping your muscles hydrated longer. So we're thinking about solving problems like that differently from how they've been done in the past. So it's been exciting. It's been exciting to get the business going, and we've gotten a great response to our first product, which is called Cognition. And Cognition is a nootropic, and it's different from other nootropics on the market because we thought mindset was really important. So we put in ingredients to help with mood. And then there's no stimulants in it. So it's not a caffeine pill. A lot of nootropics just put a few ingredients in, they slap caffeine in there, and they call it a nootropic, and they're really not. They're just caffeine pills. We don't have any stimulants because anybody who's been in a fight knows if you're loaded up on caffeine, you're going to be dehydrated and you're going to be breathing really, really heavy, sucking wind within a few minutes. You're just done. Like you're going to crash so hard if you're hypercaffeinated. So that's not what we're doing. And then we put ingredients in that have been developed for video gamers, which was a different way of doing a product like this because the studies and the ingredients that were built in these stacks for video gamers showed that it increased their actually reaction time, their recall time, not just one time, but over an enduring period. So, so the idea of cognitive endurance and acuity. So those are the things that we did different because we're looking at this sport as one where you have to make quick decisions, but you also have to do it under intense and high levels of duress and do it for a exhausting period of time. And I mean, Ryan, like you saw it in the SEAL teams, you saw it in training to become a SEAL in buds. Like if you can't win the mental piece and people start getting weak mentally, it doesn't matter how big and strong they are, they're going to lose. And that's a huge part. Anybody who's wrestled or grappled knows that like it's all about mental toughness. So we started with the mind.
This is amazing stuff because I mean, this is something that legitimately could help and enhance not just this demographic going after in BJJ and all that, but military, first responder communities, people outside that have to have that same mindset, that mentality. So
yeah, 100%, man. There's a broader market for it. And one of the things that we learned at Killcliff, and I've seen, and through different products that I've been around since I've been in the consumer products, is you just have to start somewhere, and it's easier if you can get legs under the stool by working with a defined community. So for us, it's what's closest to home.
yeah, it makes sense. So let's just say I'm a brand new BJJ guy, and I'm getting myself worn out on the mats because I don't know nothing and I'm dying every day. And I'm just like, man, I need to stimulate myself. And instead of going after the Google searches and all the stimulants and pumping myself full of stuff and then crashing right after, I go to your site. Is there like a package, a kit that I go after, or what would you suggest for a newcomer who's just getting introduced to you? What do they go after? What supplements should they go on? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for us right now, we have one offering
Okay.
just for right. So for now, of course, take my cognition product. It's going to help. And what that's going to help you do, first and foremost, you probably are not optimized for the sport. You're getting into it the first time. You probably have habits that are bad. That it's probably one of the reasons you're in the sport. You're changing. You're changing in your life, right? So some of the things that you may have consumed, like heavy pre-workouts, if you're a big lifter, you don't want that. You don't want that in combat sports. Nobody takes that. At the pro level, that's not what they're consuming, right? So you want to reduce your caffeine intake. And a lot of times when people get the bug, like that guy you mentioned just now in that scenario, they're going to get in, they're going to train 2 or 3 times a day if they can, if they really get the bug, right? And then the key is like, don't burn yourself out. I've been training 2 or 3 times a week for 20 years. That's how I've continued to do it in perpetuity because I didn't ever burn myself out. But it's okay. Some people want to go hard and fast. They want to make rank. They want to get in tournaments. I totally support that. That's amazing. But you have to, your nutrition is going to be key to being able to sustain that. And you need to sustain that with as few stimulants as possible. Or else you'll create a vicious cycle for yourself that's actually not going to be good. So that's where a product like ours comes in first, because like I have customers right now who do train multiple times a day, and I have a daily dose that we put together and we package them in sort of single serve packs. And there's 3 capsules in that pack, which is it's a daily dose. I take them all at once, but I found that there's some folks who actually take 1 capsule 3 times during the day to spread out the effect. Because when we take the product, you're going to get 8 to 12 hours of this cognitive energy. There's really no other way to describe it. There's a lot of focus, which is going to help you learn better because you're focused and paying attention. Your mind's not drifting. It helps with recall, but and mood, which is going to help you want to train. Those are all good things for helping you build a system for repeated success. But it's also the cognitive endurance piece because training is hard. Training is hard, and coming back over and over again in training, if you're not preparing yourself, you're going to wash out. You have to be able to stay energized and focused, and doing it. And with a product like ours, which doesn't have stimulants or caffeine, that's my recommendation. But on top of that, for a new athlete, there's other things they're going to want to add in their repertoire that I don't have today, but I'll have some form of in the future. I think creatine is a great supplement for the sport. It's absolutely one of the best out there, right? Joints are really important. One of the best things you can do for yourself as a new athlete is check your ego at the door and tap, or else you'll end up like me. I hadn't been out of SEAL teams that long, and there was no way I was going to let dudes give me an arm bar, man. Like those things, I'd hear like tendons popping. I'm like, no. And I'm feeling it now. It was dumb. I should have just tapped, right? I should have tapped. And so that's another one of my recommendations is there's no shame in tapping. Like it's just part of the learning experience. But you need to think about joint health because one of the reasons we built this brand is because we've collectively all been grappling the team for 10, 20 years a person and we're feeling the pain from making bad decisions on the mats or not taking care of our bodies. Or we're in that period where, man, the amount of people I train with, they're completely hooked on the sport. They're my age that train every day. They're high level. They're going to continue to contribute to the community. They're going to contribute to the community, and they're going to create a great path for new people coming in, mentor them, and continue to be tough competitors for the next 15, 20 years. Those people they all get really serious around this point. They're like, oh, I got to start changing my life for longevity. So those are some of the things. I mean, that's a really long way to answer to a simple question, but I think I would focus on aligning your nutrition with your training regimen and taking that very serious if you want to take the sport serious.
Well, I love that idea of, this can effectively work for anybody from the pro level to the person who's just completely got the bug to the person who's beginning. I mean, that one-stop shop supplement that you can jump in and say, okay, this is really going to help me. And you talk about that 8 hours of sustained flow state energy. I mean, your demographic you're missing is parents. You should give it to them all day long, right?
So something you'd mentioned, that's amazing you said that, Ryan. When we started handing out samples to people, we were getting this product. It was on the line. We're manufacturing it. But we had some loose samples. We want to get feedback. Some of the women that got their hands on it, and there's some reviews on our website. They're completely legitimate. Like women that were perimenopausal and menopausal were like, "Hey, I took your product and it's done more for me than any product I've taken in terms of my mood state and brain fog, like cutting through the brain fog." So there's a bigger market for this out there, but it's like what you're saying, right? But it's cool getting that feedback because you're like the types of feedback we're getting are like that exact example. Like here's a woman who was never my target customer, who's in her late 40s, early 50s, it's finding a real benefit from consuming my product. And of course, the first thing they do is they try my product. They're like, this works. Let me go find the Costco version and save a bunch of money. And then they come back and they buy from me again, just like that thing at Costco gave me a headache. It wasn't any good. I don't know what that was. Your stuff worked. But same thing with dudes on low dose Adderall. I've had multiple guys coming up to me saying, Timar, I tried your product and I'm not taking Adderall anymore. This is healthier, better. And by the way, I'm getting motivated. I'm starting to train again.
Dude, that is absolutely amazing. That's pretty cool stuff. Well, I'm sold. I'm gonna get some, and my wife's gonna steal it all from me because this is the biggest thing. Is I think everybody in the world right now, at least from people that I know, we are so stimulated. We're so used to stimulating ourselves just to get through a functional day that we're tapped. And so being able to have a product that doesn't stimulate that way, that doesn't give you that caffeine, where you can actually start to let your body work together and be symbiotic with what you've created, I think that's really cool.
And that's a great point too. I love you made that point because we put the ingredients we put in to enhance your mood state help regulate your dopamine response for exactly that reason, because we're overstimulated and we're tapped out. And so getting like after that, like trying to get in the right mindset to train and get in the mood to train is difficult. So that's one of the when we approach this and we create a product, that was one of the top priorities. Is like we want to put stuff in that helps people, it helps them with their dopamine response, helps them release some dopamine, helps them feel good, and helps them get the mindset for training. And we end up putting something in that's from the velvet bean. And I always say it wrong. It's like Bucana Perines, or L-Dopa. And it turns out that L-Dopa is one of the most widely prescribed nutraceuticals for patients with Parkinson's disorder. And that's at a high, like a medicinal dose, right? So that's like a couple thousand milligrams a day. We have 100, right? So we're not talking, we don't have those doses, but we have enough to help modulate your response. So you start to feel good. And then you start to feel good and you start training. Well, training is just going to naturally help you build endorphins, dopamine, and feel good, right? So we want to get you started and get you going. But that's a really great example that you brought up, because that's part of the struggle in today's society is we're overstimulated.
No question about it. I mean, I say that purely from experience. So I've done it myself. So I always love to end on this one because this always throws everybody for a loop, but it seems it needs to be said. So I want you to dig down and tell us a story, a short story of somebody in your life from the military who influenced you, a hero of yours, a mentor of yours, something that people should know that's the untold story. I always say, some guys will refer to some of their brothers that have given their life for this country, others mentorship, good words of wisdom. What you got?
Man, let me think about this for a second, give you a good answer. You want me to get a guy from the military?
I mean, I always ask that because it seems that most of that in our younger years, we get that context, we get that mentorship, and no question it should continue on, but it seems like we've had some powerful stories from mill guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to be honest with you. There are some guys. I have been very fortunate to have I've been very fortunate throughout my career to work with people that just I got lucky that I worked with people that were exceptional. There were some people I worked with that were exceptional in what they did that I didn't really respect them on their personal level because they had bad morals, but they were exceptional in their job and I learned from them. But I had several different stints where I worked for guys that were exceptional and that really, really, really heavily influenced me. But I will tell you what really changed me. There was one moment. So I I spent like I meandered most of my career. I found that like if I was in a startup environment, I had this level of adrenaline and excitement about it because it's pioneering. So much in life is already pre prescribed right now. It's like you're in this architecture, it's already been built. Like you're just a monkey in a jumpsuit. And as a former SEAL, I can't handle that. I don't want to be a monkey in a jumpsuit. I want to be creative. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to get in there. I love to lead, but I also like rolling up my sleeve and get a little bit of, in the field of fire a little bit. I want to take a few punches and throw a few punches. So, so I found like environments where it enabled me to do that, right? Which was these small company environments that had big ideas, small companies, big ideas, going to change the world. We're going to do great stuff. Um, and but the thing was like that was only part of the equation for me because that wasn't aligned with like personal passion. So I was taking the incoming fire, I was putting effective fire down range. We're moving small unit squad tactics. We're building things, but the things we're building are not necessarily the things I really get excited about. It was just I was trying to for me, I was always trying to find um, I was always trying for the coolest opportunity and getting like this one. And I just had to make this one work. And that was a story. And fortunately I went through a lot of those experiences before the proliferation of social media, because who knows what sort of manic depressive I would have been if I was in a social media environment. And I think I'm gonna get this, I'm getting this. Um, but this isn't a military guy. This isn't a military guy. This is thinking really deep and saying, where did the light switch go on for me? And where did I change and make fundamental decisions that impacted like where I am today and why I'm excited about Grapple Science, other businesses I'm starting, and I'm really thrilled about the whole Killcliff thing and what happened there and how that turned out. So I got recruited for an interview for a CEO job. I'm like, oh, this is pretty exciting. But this tech company in Atlanta, they want to recruit me for a CEO job. They got three candidates and I'm one of them. And like they're a finalist. And there's a guy, he's a famous Atlanta tech entrepreneur. I've told this story. I told a story to the guys from the Honor Foundation when they came by to Killcliff. And his name's Josh Lieberman. In fact, he was the speaker. He was the key speaker. So I said this, I told the story before I had him up there. So Josh Lieberman, he interviewed me and we had a great conversation and about what I've been doing because I've been in a startup that it'd been going for like 7 years. And he finally says, he's like, man, like, what's a guy like you doing in a place like that? And it just clicked, like that moment, it just clicked, like that something was not aligned in my life, in my career. Like And we had a conversation and kind of unpacked that, but I'm a high energy, really creative guy. And I was in this company that I didn't have that much passion for what the company did. I was more passionate about this idea of building something. And so from that point, I actually immediately started, like, I ended up not getting the job. So I was like, I'm a shoe in. He asked me that question. I crushed the interview. We hit it off. Like, turns out he was a supporter of Navy SEAL Foundation. So I was like, I'm totally gonna get this job at this startup he's doing. I didn't get it, but I emailed him afterwards, and I was like, I was very grateful for the time he spent with me. And I said, because he's really smart. We spent like a half day together. And I was like, look, man, like, you've been super successful. Realize I'm not your guy, but would you be my mentor? Would you give me guidance? Would you help me understand like where my blind spots are? Would you like kind of like, be a sounding board for me? And he was 100% in on that. He's like, yeah, that'd be amazing. I love the conversation. You weren't a fit for this, but let's like keep the relationship alive. And, to this day, like when I start these businesses, like I bounce the ideas off him. He's like, hey, here's where, like, when I was at Killcliff, he's like, here's where your blind spots were. Here's what you weren't good at. Here's what you were good at. And so, but it was that one conversation where things clicked for me. And I just realized that I needed to find the environment that gets me excited to get up in the morning and be productive, which is for me is the small startup, small company, early stage growth environment. But then I needed to also find the the industry or the niche or the segment that was interesting for me, which turns out as a team guy and as a guy who's been doing jujitsu, since when I started, there were only 100,000 people in America doing it. Now there's millions. Like I've been down that path and like being able to like when I went to Killcliff, that was the next thing I did after that conversation I had with that guy is I went to Killcliff as a consultant first, and then they ended up hiring me, and then they ended up making me the CEO. And I didn't ask for any of that; it just happened. But I was immediately like all of a sudden I was at peace in this weird sort of way. I was like, wow, I'm in the startup environment. I'm in a business where the product and the business idea is completely aligned with who I am and what I want is to consume as a person, also the things I value. And once I had that alignment, then like it was just thrilling. The whole Killcliff experience from the time I took the leadership to the time I left was thrilling. So I was proud to have had that experience and I learned so much from it. I made so many mistakes. I did so many things really, really well too. And one of the things that I got from that experience, when you're leading something, everybody gets imposter syndrome at some point. I'm like, dude, I'm a CEO. I don't know. I'm not most HR departments would fire me. Like I'm the CEO. Why am I a CEO? Like, but when I was CEO, I only had I only had two people leave the whole time I was there. Like people rallied around the business and we grew it. People would walk through walls because we created a great environment. We had operational excellence and execution. We created a great environment. But I learned to not be scared to take really smart, productive risks. Like when we went out and got Joe Rogan, I went out and got Joe Rogan, like there wasn't a bunch of premeditation that went into that. I literally wrote the guy a 5-paragraph essay. And I had, we supported somebody who was really good friends with him, and that guy delivered it to him. And then Joe, he loved what he read. He texted me and we started a relationship. So, but you just have to be creative and not be scared to take a risk and punch out. But for me, like there were so many great military guys that I tried to emulate that I learned from, when I was in, but, as my career advanced, I think the one sort of impactful moment I had, excuse me, was in that conversation with Josh Lieberman, where he basically looked at me. I was excited. I'm trying to get his job, be his CEO for him. I'd been a VP of sales for like 5 years before that. So I'm like, yeah, this is my step up. Let's go. And he just looked at me. He's like, dude, you're in the wrong place. Like, he's like,
Wow.
and so it put a lot of things in perspective, because the other thing that I learned from that, and one of the comments that he made in the discussion that occurred shortly thereafter, was and this probably goes to a lot of military guys. I know it goes to SEALs, is we will take on a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort because we don't want to quit, because we want to prove people wrong. because whatever reason we have. And what I got from that conversation is like, the business was literally like putting lipstick on a pig. It wasn't going to go anywhere. Now, since then, there's been some pivots that were made, but that business was not set up for success. And I was in this consummate state of restructuring the business and trying to find new ways to win when it just wasn't a big enough idea or good enough technology at the time to make a difference and an impact. But I was like literally willing to run up Iwo Jima here, like trying to take a brand that was dead on arrival to make it something. And that was part of what he was pointing out to me, was like, and part of it was like the lack of alignment, like with you and all your, your personality and everything you have, like, why are you in that environment? And then two, like, do you realize that the effort you're putting into that, if you actually bet on a winner, where you could be? So those were, I mean, I have to say, like, that was probably the most impactful moment. The other one I'll say, just to kind of round it out, because I got to give you more than one for two. When I was in private security, I did get to be Oprah security guard for a short period of time. That was awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
We got to get Oprah on Grapple Science, bro. We're
Yeah,
gonna work
dude,
on that.
I'm just saying, like, I drove her to her airplane. I drove her around after Hurricane Katrina down this, and all the afflicted areas, and I did the whole security for a show in the Astrodome. And so, like, I was one with Oprah. I had a room right next to her in the Four Seasons. But she didn't talk to me, but I think she waved. I think I saw, just like Gwen Stefani, Gwen Stefani made eyes with me, and then she went and found Blake Shelton. So Oprah, she kind of looked at me from the window with that look, like, next time I'm in town, buddy.
I believe every word you're saying.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I don't know if that's a good answer, Ryan, but like, I just have to think, I mean, it had so many experiences, but that one conversation really changed my perspective. And I started trying to find what was right for me at that point, with a broader perspective. And I think being able to handle that the right way, go back and take a really talented guy who's doing the types of things you might want to be doing. Maybe they could be in a different industry, who cares, but has that experience, like being able to, like, say, hey, would you give me some advice? Would you guide me? Can I call on you from time to time? And he said, yeah. And in fact, I share stuff with him all the time. I send stuff to him that I'm working on, like, just recently, to get feedback. And he's always like completely candid, like, this is dumb, that's smart. Try this. Wow. That was probably for me, the inspiring moment that changed my trajectory for the better on a lot of stuff that I'm doing.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I think it's a great answer, man. And this is the thing, I really enjoyed this specific show, because it's not just about, we haven't just talked about your company, but you've given a lot of information as to what it really takes to get to the level that you are at currently. And you go from saying you're struggling to running a very successful large company, and then you go and start up a company again, a brand new beginner company. And it's just that constant, I see a thing, I know that there's a need for this, and I'm going to dig all into it. So we didn't just learn about your company today, we learned a lot about you as a human and as a leader. And I think people will get more out of it than just understanding one specific thing. So I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you, dude. Thank you for having me on. It's been way too long, and I'm glad to be here and to support the podcast. I love what you're doing for the community, because giving us this sort of the ability to speak out to a large group and present who we are, what we're working on, and help each other, man. That's just amazing. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Always, man. Well, there you have it. John Timar, aka Big T, Grapple Science. Go check out grapplescience.com. Go buy product today.
Frogman.